Welcome back on this Monday morning edition of Hot Mic on WDAY Extra, streaming on Inform.com, also on KSFL TV in Sioux Falls and on KNBN in Rapid City. Busy day today. Remind you, coming up at 1:30 today, we'll have the press conference of the retirement press conference of Bison quarterbacks coach Randy Hedberg after a 45-year coaching career. We'll have that for you live at 1:30 on Inform.com. That's just one of the many news stories around the world of FCS football. And to chat more on what's going on in that realm, we'll welcome back Sam Herder from Hero Sports on this Monday morning. Sam, appreciate you for coming on. Hope you had a great weekend. Of course, that news from Coach Hedberg came out last week. Do you have a reaction to that? NDSU's got some work to do, some big shoes to fill.
Yeah, I think it was an announcement that really everyone around college football took notice to, just because I think Coach Hedberg is a well-known name, and of course what he's done with NDSU quarterbacks. Now it'll be 4 straight guys getting a chance in the NFL. If not getting drafted, I think Cam Miller has a pretty good chance to getting drafted, but if not, he'll be a UDFA. And so you go from Carson Wentz to Easton Stick to Trey Lance to Cam Miller, like that's a pretty good lineage of quarterbacks. And obviously Coach Hedberg played a huge role in that as far as developing them and all that. And I think too, just his ability to recruit North Dakota has been really strong as well. So that'll be missed. But he was obviously close to being retired, so I don't think this news came out of nowhere. Obviously, I'm guessing there's plans in place as far as prepping for this and who takes over for him as quarterbacks coach. I assume maybe Coach Landry will take over that role, and then they'll have to hire a running backs coach, I believe. So, but still, news that I think a lot of people around college football took notice of.
Absolutely. And I think it goes without saying, we wish congratulations to Coach Hedberg and on everything that he's done throughout his coaching career and even back in his playing career. I think a retirement is well-deserved. And you alluded to it, the lineage of quarterbacks that he has taught in his time at NDSU is just absolutely ridiculous. And Cam Miller being the one to hang the hat on and wrap up your career on, that's pretty solid. Hedberg was at the Shrine Bowl, and Cam Miller really put on a fantastic performance. He helped lead his East team to 22 points in the second quarter, 10 for 17, 99 yards. He ran the ball well. He had a couple of 2-point conversions. I think Cam Miller's a guy, if you look back on his performance in the Shrine Bowl, he improved his stock a little bit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think more so from practices, that's kind of where you make your money is the practices rather than the games. Just the individual drills, whether you're an offensive lineman or defensive lineman, quarterback, they'll put you through specific drills to see how your talents and raw abilities translates to the next level. You still want to perform well in the actual game. You don't want to go 2 for 12 and throw 5 interceptions as a quarterback.
Right.
But he still obviously played solid in the game. But I think what he did during practice was really what caught eyes. And you saw some video clips of what it was, whatever. If it was 7-on-7 or whatever the case may be, Miller threading the needle with some throws. So, like I said a little bit ago, I think he probably moved his way into being an NFL draft pick. Going from a UDFA type of guy to a day 3. That'd be rounds 4 through 7, somewhere in there. I think he really helped his stock this last week.
Absolutely. And to continue that conversation over on the Senior Bowl, a guy who was tasked with protecting Cam Miller this season, Gray Zabel. What a week he had at the Senior Bowl. He was the practice player of the week down there. That's the 4th Bison to do that, which was phenomenal. How impressive did he look? And like you mentioned, the game is one thing, but the practices are important, especially for offensive linemen. And Gray stood out over the top of the rest, didn't he?
It seemed like he was the talk of the Senior Bowl, at least from what I've seen. Now, I also follow a lot of FCS guys and NDSU media guys, so maybe that's why it seems
Good
like
point, yeah.
a lot of talk was on Gray Zabel. But you did see all the kind of the top NFL draft analysts tweeting a lot about Gray Zabel, talking about how good he looks, talking about his flexibility of he can play anywhere on the offensive line, which is huge for an NFL team. If you have a guy that can play guard or center, potentially could bump out to the tackle spot if need be, that just makes you even more valuable for an FCS or for an NFL team. And I think just for I think I've said it on the show a couple of times. For FCS guys, they usually start lower on the boards, day
Hmm.
three guys, and then because scouts want to see how do you stack up. If you're a Gray Zabel and you're going up against a Florida State defensive lineman, how do you stack up going up against a Florida State guy compared to a Murray State guy? And
Right.
obviously he stacked up very, very well. So that took him from already, maybe a day two guy to being even higher up, on day two, if not sneaking into day one. I mean, I think going into All-Star week a few years ago, Christian Watson was looked at as like a seventh round guy. Troy Anderson was looked at as a seventh round guy, and both of those guys end up going day two. And so this is kind of the start to the pre-draft process for FCS guys to really rise on the boards. And Zabel was already pretty high. I
Yeah.
just think he helped his stock even more and maybe just solidified the fact that he's probably going to be a top 50 pick this year.
He was the top 50 prospect going into Senior Bowl week, and I was looking at some mock drafts before the show started. And it seems like in the ESPN ones, they have him second round pick to the 49ers. And I think any team in the NFL, it seems like they're all chomping at the bit to try to get him because, as you alluded to, his ability, I thought he was fantastic at the guard positions, at the center positions, and he really held his own. I think that was one of the more impressive things that he did at the Senior Bowl this week.
Yeah, and I think too and this isn't the end all be all because every player is different, but there is something to be said about the fact that every NDSU offensive lineman that's gone to the NFL, it seems like they've all been impactful guys. Even some of
Right.
the UDFA type of guys, like a Nash Jensen wasn't an NFL draft pick, but he's played quite a bit. And so again, I'm not saying NFL teams are saying, okay, Gray Zabel is from NDSU, he automatically is going to be a starter for us because that's just not how it works. But
Right.
it does play a part where they know, okay, NDSU guys, they go to the NFL, just with their fundamentals, how they were taught certain things, the language of the offense, like they transition from NDSU to the NFL, pretty well just based off of how their system runs. And so I do think Gray being an NDSU guy in the past lineage, that helps him, even more on top of how we performed this last week.
Absolutely. Of course, there were a ton of other FCS guys, either at the Shrine Bowl or the Senior Bowl. In your opinion, who made themselves some money over this last week? Who stood out to you?
Yeah, I think David Walker did. He didn't measure in. Like I think he measured in at 6 foot, and on his roster page, I think he was listed at 6'1" or 6'2". But like a 6 foot edge is going to raise some alarms from NFL teams, but he still dominated at the Senior Bowl. And so I think David Walker, the Buck Buchanan Award winner, really had a good week. I also think Jackson Slater, offensive lineman from Sacramento State, had a really strong week as well. And so those are probably the three guys that stood out the most with Zabel, Walker, and Slater. Another guy too from Alabama A&M, Carson Vincent, another offensive lineman. I thought he had a strong week as well. One guy that's it depends on who you ask or which mock draft you looked at. Some people have Zabel as the number one FCS guy. Some other people have Charles Grant, another offensive
Yeah.
lineman from William and Mary. Probably a guard at the NFL level, but really strong, really long arms and kind of just has the measurables. He had a Senior Bowl invite, but he didn't go there. I'm not sure why, if there was an injury or what happened there. I didn't get a chance to see why he wasn't there. I don't know if that'll hurt his draft stock or not, but it'll be interesting to see, who is that first guy off the board in a few months. Is it going to be Zabel, or is it going to be Charles Grant? Or, some people will still think that David Walker could be the top guy off the board
Yeah.
from the FCS. But it seems like it's a pretty strong draft class for the FCS overall, and it'll be interesting to see who that first guy is off the board.
No doubt. No doubt. I got a couple more for you before I let you go here on this Monday morning. I've been trying to follow along with what's going on with Sacramento State. It seems like there's a ton of effort from them to try to bump up to the FBS level. They have plans out for a new multi-use stadium. What is the likelihood of Sacramento State moving up to the next level? Is that something that we could see in potentially 2026?
Yeah, I would say there's probably like a 90% chance that Sacramento State will be FBS in 2026. I have on At first I was pretty skeptical, because their president has been, very aggressive, coming out and saying we plan to go FBS. And initially people were like, well, okay, like you can plan to go FBS, but that's just not how it works. Like Austin Peay's athletic director a few years ago said, yeah, we hope to be FBS by 2025, and we're going to work our way towards that. And
Hmm.
they're not close to
Yeah.
making that happen. And so initially, again, this was a couple of months ago, people were saying, okay, Sac State has all these NIL pledges. They're talking about these facility upgrades. They're saying they plan to go FBS, but you can't just really go FBS. You can if you pull the Liberty route, which is you just have gobs of money. You say you're going to make the jump. You ask for a waiver from the NCAA to be able to make that jump as an independent. And if the NCAA denies you that waiver, you're just going to sue them because you have the
Yeah.
money to take them to court. And I
Right.
think Sac State has a lot of financial support, and their president has said we will be FBS by 2026. And I have some connections on the coaching staff, and so I asked one of the coaches early last week, and it was off the record.
Hmm.
But then, like a few days later, the president went on the record and said the same thing that the coach told me. So I just tweeted it out. I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
I guess it's open record now. They basically they're going to kick down every door to get in FBS invites soon. And so they join an FBS conference in 2026. And if they don't get that invite, they're just going to go independents. They've already, talked to the people they need to talk to and see, what the pathway is for them to go FBS independent. And it appears that is going to be their likely routes because I don't think the Pac-12 has interest in Sacramento State. I don't think the Mountain West has interest. Conference USA maybe, but I've heard that Conference USA isn't really looking to expand. It's not going to be the MAC. It's not going to be the Sun Belt. So I don't see where the FBS home is going to be for Sac State, and that's why I think independent route is probably going to be the most likely. And again, their president said we will be FBS, and then recently he said we'll have an announcement pretty soon that we're going to FBS. And so I have like if you're a school president, you don't just say that and then it doesn't happen, or else you're going to get a vote of no confidence and you're going
Right.
to be out of a job. So it appears that is going to be happening, and if that does happen in 2026, that would mean Sac State is ineligible for the playoffs this upcoming year,
Right.
just because that's usually how that reclassification process goes. You're ineligible for the FCS playoffs the year before you make the jump to the FBS.
What?
Unless you're James Madison, that was kind of a different story a few
Right,
years ago.
right, exactly. What do you think about going the independent route? I've been thinking about that. Well, why wouldn't teams do that? And then I think about it a little bit more. Well, scheduling's tough. You kind of lose that conference pizzazz. What do you think about going independent? Do you think that's a good move moving forward?
It's a gamble.
Yeah,
It's a huge gamble, but I think it could pay off for a team like Sacramento State because it's so backwards. But I mean, the Mountain West, they were looking at a team like Louisiana Tech before they're looking at North Dakota State,
yeah,
just because Louisiana Tech was FBS and they don't want to deal with like the FCS transition and getting them caught up to speed. And so
right,
just having that FBS label moves the needle so much more. I mean, the Mountain West was talking a little bit to Sam Houston as far as being,
right.
a potential target because again, Sam Houston was FBS. And so I think if you're Sac State, the thought process is, again, they're going to try to get a conference invite soon, but it doesn't look like they're going to get one. Their thought process is let's just go independent in 2026. And then when things shake out, the real alignment wheels spin again in 2027,
Yeah.
2028. We have that FBS label and that'll get us, into a conference. And so it's a gamble. It could pay off, but going FBS is very unstable. I mean, we saw who was it UMass joined the MAC just because they didn't want to be an independent anymore. It's really expensive because you have to
Yeah.
pay for every home game unless you sign some home and homes that'll help. But you don't get as an FBS independent, you don't get CFP. Payout money. You don't get a path to the CFP. You don't have any bowl tie-ins. Even if you have a good enough record, you'll get to a bowl game. You don't have conference rivals. Your scheduling is all over the place. You
Hmm.
don't have conference awards for players. You're kind of just in no man's land. But for Sac State, they basically have these NIL pledges of millions of dollars, where if you go FBS, you will get all this money. And so their thought process is, well, if we don't go FBS, we're not going to get that money. And so we have to go FBS no matter what. So we get all these NIL pledges. My only question, I haven't gotten an answer for that, is the $50 million in NIL pledges was based on them joining an FBS conference. And so if they're just FBS independent and they're in no man's land, like, is that going to excite all those boosters and
Right.
NIL pledges? I don't know, but I'm guessing they've talked to enough people that told them, hey, if you go FBS, we'll support you financially. And they'll need that financial support to pull off that move if they do go FBS independent.
Interesting. Well, good perspective there, Sam. I appreciate you for joining us on this Monday morning. Sam Herder from Hero Sports joining us on this Monday morning edition of Hot Mic. Appreciate it, Sam.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Always good to chat FCS football. Lot going on. That's why we keep Sam here through the off season. It's never stops. Never stops. Interesting with what's going on with Sacramento State. All right. We're due for a break. We're going to wrap up hour number 1 when we come back. I want to complain about the Pro Bowl. Oh, take it down. This is my highlight wrestling tape. I want to complain about the Pro Bowl. We'll do that when we come back. I was a monster back in the day. Hot Mic comes up next.